So last video, we covered the registration and the list management, and this video will cover the rest of phase 4 and then phase 5, which includes uploading to buyers and receivers, otherwise known as loved ones. And then phase 5 is the matching and the queuing up of messages to send out once the matching is complete. And also covers handling which kind of transport, or whether it's going to be email or SMS when we're doing the messaging. Let's go through an example. We'll actually log in, and that's not the right thing to have there. Okay, and then we'll this is the new login that I made the last video, and we'll just log in under that account. We'll make a new list, call it test 3, and this one's going to be viewable. And I'm going to manage the list detail. We'll go over here to my little test data, and I'll upload some buyers. And over here, some receivers. So see, it automatically notices that the names are the same. So if I click here, that one's not the same as anything, but Abe is over here, Charlie is over here, and Edward is over here. So at this point, I can say, you know what, I think Abe doesn't really like Frank, doesn't want to buy for him, so add him on the list, and George too. And maybe Bob doesn't want to buy for Charlie, and then maybe Edward doesn't want to buy for Harold, George. I think that's enough. Do one more. Edward doesn't get along with people, apparently. so maybe he doesn't want to, maybe he just doesn't like to buy for certain people. He only wants to buy for a couple of people, let's say. Who should we add on there? Frank too? We'll add Frank on as well. All right, so now we're going to run the matches. So I forgot to mention, so I can delete any of these people off any of these lists and add them back on. Maybe I should demonstrate that. I'll get rid of Bob. Come back over here. Add Bob back in. Okay. And I said that Bob didn't want to buy for Charlie. Is that what it was? Bob, Charlie. Okay. So now we're ready to match and lock the list. To my left, is it going through the process correctly? Looks like it did. Okay, so now I'm going to go take a look at what the matches were, because I said in the previous page that I did want to see the matches. It does show me this column here. It shows me who got matched with who, and then the exclusions are still there. And this one person, Edward, if you remember on the list over here, it has both an email address and a phone number. So actually, I can choose which way to contact them. I could switch that back and forth. So I think I'm done with that. I'm going to finalize the list. And it should queue up my... Okay, so that's what the process does. And so let's take a look at our code. One thing I was going to mention, you notice how everything seems to be here in this backlog document. That's because at this point, I'm not even looking at the design doc that I put together in the beginning. That was just to get my thoughts going in the right direction. So here, you know, on a to-do basis, I'm adding things to this list and removing things from this list as the design changes. And some things are just kind of put on like I think I call it a parking lot. Yes, here's some ideas that, you know, I might add later, but you know, they're not going to fit into this this workflow the way I have it. So looking at the code. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that I part of the design process, I wrote out what is the workflow. all right, because I like, how do I think through what I'm trying to build? So I had to think through, okay, I'm going to be creating a list. I'm going to be determining, some attributes about the list. And then speaking of which, it's not even on this flow, but I added on the gift date. If you notice that here, that wasn't part of the original design. And I started thinking about how I needed to have some way of testing the gift date. So it needs to be a changeable date. Did I say that in my last video? I did. Uploading the list of buyers, then you can make exclusions. Some of those exclusions are entered automatically, as you saw, and the names match. Display the list of, so there's going to be numbers next to the loved ones, so you can tell which one is matched with which. Let's take a look at that. See how there's, the numbers match over here, so you can kind of tell what's what. Clicking on the numbers removes them. Removes the exceptions. I can't change the matches. That's not something that I added to this this version, but I think it's fine. I think the matches are coming out just fine for the algorithm that I've chosen, which will be my secret sauce, so to speak. Then we make a final list and we queue up the emails to send. So that's kind of like the workflow that I was basically dreaming up. So that's what I was going to be working off of. Okay, so let's take a look at the match HTML page. That is this page here. So here's this match at the top. Okay, so I'm cycling through the list of buyers and I'm getting the object and the index. I care about the index because actually, do I care about that in this case? No, I don't care about that in this case. But down here in receivers, I do care about the index, because if you see how this index is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, under the hood in the database, these don't have IDs that are this low in number. And we're way up into the, but it doesn't matter what the number is. It's not going to match these 6. So, so there has to be a way to display that index. Here it is, index +1, because it starts at 0, so you have to add 1, so the first number is 1. And then here's the names of the loved ones in order here. But up here under buyers, I care about the ID. So you'll see here, so here's the ID of the buyer. It's the name buyer plus the buyer ID of that object that's coming back from the buyer's list. And then when I click on this, I'm doing a highlight process. It highlights who got matched and who was said that they would not want to be matched with it. See what I mean? So you can see how that works out by the colors. If it's a viewable list, then we're going to show the matches. There's an array of matches, and they're indexed by the buyer ID. Actually, is it an array? I think it might be a hash, actually. We'll see in a little bit. And then I give a boxed list, see the span boxed, of loved ones from the excluded list. And here's the index of loved ones. Remember, I was saying I need some way to convert from the loved ID into the index, meaning this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want to display those numbers, not the ID under the hood. So there has to be some way to map those two together. And I'll show you that in a little bit. And then I'm looking at the style of this SMS. So that on click, it's we're going to take a look at this SMS, toggle SMS. We're going to switch this toggle here. And then by style, I'm looking at it's either bold or it's not, depending on whether it's changeable. And then the destination type by the buyer is going to be displayed. All right, I think that's it. And then, then there's the final button here at the end. You click on it and you finalize the list. And that's about it for the HTML. Now, if we go over to the JavaScript. All right, so when the page gets authenticated, then you're going to load the data. main set data. Here's the data that's loaded. So I'm getting buyers, I'm getting receivers, I'm getting the avoid list, otherwise known as the exclusions. And then I grab the matches. I'm also grabbing various parts of the detail about what list am I looking at, what's the name of the list, is it viewable, and have the messages been sent yet. If it's not ready yet, you saw on mounting, it says they're ready to true. If for some reason something happens where the mounting takes a long time, I don't know why that would be, but it has happened because I got an infinite loop on this page or something like that. So either way, if it's not ready, then you can't go through this process. Anyway. Okay, so here's where the data lives, and I'm using Vue.js. So here you go, destination type is a hash, destination style is a hash. The current loved, meaning which ones, so if I select, say, Dave, well, let's try Charlie. So which ones are, so the ones that are matched are in green, and the ones that are avoided are in gray. When I say current, when I say I'm selecting just this one, so what's my current buyer ID? There's a buyer ID for Charlie that gets sets for that, and then I only have this list of matched people and loved people. All right, so the grab buyers calls the API, grabs all the buyers list, and we'll look at the back end in a little bit. So this calls the back end for that list, grab all the buyers, put it into an array, and then load the destinations. Destinations meaning whether it's SMS or if it's email for each of those buyers. Okay, then we grab the receivers, which is otherwise known as loved ones, grab all of them by the list, put that into the data field. Same with the void, matches, and here's our load destinations. It's a little bit more complicated. When it's an unchangeable item, then it's going to be bold. And so I say, okay, if it's using SMS, then I'm going to be showing SMS, of course. And then if the email is, if there's no email, basically, it has no length, then the style would be unchangeable. And same thing for if it's not using SMS, it's using email, same sort of thing. Check to see what the phone is and set it unchangeable if that's appropriate. And you have to use the word set, view.set, in order to make these, in order to make a hash reactive. That took a while to figure out. That had to go through forums and stuff to figure out that you can't just, set the variable and have it reactive when you change it. It won't change on the page unless you do with this view.set. Toggle SMS, when you click one of these areas here, when it's not been completed like that, it'll go through and toggle between email and SMS. And it will say API update buyer SMS, either to 1 or to 0, depending which way we're going. There's only 2 cases, so I just handle both cases explicitly here. And here's that buyer highlight thing that we're talking about here. If you click on one of these items, it updates these all this highlighting. So it's going to remove anything that was shaded as a match first, and then add in the new ones. And it's going to remove the ones that were shaded gray for the previous list, and then put in the new ones. That's where that that loved list is. It says, what is that list of items here? No, let's see. Excluded. Yeah, current loved. Yeah, that's the ones I was saying. It keeps track of that. So you can pop them back off the list. So you want to record them as you're adding them in here. So keep track of these are the ones that are highlighted, so you know which ones you have to go clear when you're done. Okay, if it is viewable, Then we're going to do the same thing for the current matched, get rid of the old ones that are matched and add the new ones. And the last procedure we have here is finalizing the list. You just call API, finalize list. Not too bad. Looks like I don't need this right. Okay, let's go take a look at the back end. No, actually, let's take a look at the API client because we just called a few things, but we didn't really, talk about what was being called. You know what? Too much detail. Let's go into the back end. You have an idea what it calls. Let's take a look at these. Did we already show this in previous video? I don't think so. I think we just did the list stuff. I don't think we did buyers, or we'll look at buyers as an example. There's the routes. Okay, so if I'm adding a buyer, that's from the previous page, the list page. If I'm adding the buyer, if I don't have a first name or I don't have a last name, then you get an error. If I don't have either a phone number or an email address, then I get this error. If I don't have a list, obviously that's a problem. And if we get an email address, but it's not a valid email, that's a problem. If you get a phone number, but it's not a valid phone number, that's also a problem. So we handle each of those errors. And if the list is mine, then I'm going to add it to the buyer list. If the list is not mine, I want to say, hey, you don't have permission for that. Okay. So if I'm deleting, I just pass in the ID of the buyer to be deleted, check to see the list. Well, first we get the list of which list is assigned to that buyer. The other way around, which list the buyer is assigned to. Then, okay, is that list mine? And then I can delete it. Otherwise, you have permission issues or something like that. For patching, that's for doing an update. Again, we're going to be checking to see what the list is for that buyer. Is that list mine? And I'm going to modify the SMS for that buyer. And getting the list of buyers. Is the list mine? If it is, get all of them, return that data. Okay, not too bad. Let's go back to the DB call section for buyers. Okay, if I'm adding, here's all the variables passed in for adding. You just insert into buyer, deleting, update the is deleted bit. There is, when I talk about CRUD, C-R-U-D, create, read, update, delete. I never gave the app permission to delete. If you want to have something deleted, you set it to is deleted equals 1. That's as far as we go. When we're modifying SMS, I set to 1. That is assuming that I have a phone number that's long enough to be used as SMS. And the same thing for email. It needs to be a certain minimum length to be valid. I think this is only to cover the cases for things that are kind of out of band, so to speak. Like normally using the app, I'm already checking for these things. I'm only adding valid email addresses. I'm only adding valid phone numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So the only reason this wouldn't be true is if, I put something in the database directly, or I don't know, some sort of hack. But it's just a safety measure I add in just in case. When I'm getting all, grabbing by the list ID, anything that's not deleted, bring back that data. And by get list, I'm just trying to say trying to find out what the list ID is for that particular buyer. Again, assuming it's not deleted. And I think I've just about covered everything. Let's go back here. What else? We talked about buyers. Okay, so getting receivers, all the same sort of logic. I just copy, pasted, and changed the names. Avoid is very similar. Match is very similar. Destinations, same sort of logic. I mean, there's nothing really groundbreaking about any of this. Finalize the list. Yes, that's probably a little bit more interesting. Let's look at that. Oh, that's the front end, sorry. backend list. Okay. I think we looked at this last time, but we didn't get into messages sent. So yes, if we get to this last page and we say we're going to finalize, we're going to do this messages sent thing to set to messages sent is true. All right, well, let's take a look at this, at the route for list and look for that finalized thing. Here's final. Okay, so first we got to make sure we have a list. And if that list is mine, if it is, I'm going to publish the list. Ta-da! That's that new thing for what do I need to do to publish this list to the queue. When I say list, I mean, all this, buyers and receivers, this match pattern. We want to send out an email or a text telling people who they were matched with, right? So we're going to do this publish step. And that is found here. Publish. So I'm going to be, grabbing all sorts of things all at once here. I need to get buyers, loved ones, matches, and I'm going to be composing a message, the front of the message. And that requires a database call. In fact, let's just go look at that down here. So I'm going to do a list get one, just look at that one list, grab the record set, and I'm going to say message part one, the name of my list, message part two. That's what I get from the first part. What is this message one and message two? Well, it's up here. As part of list blank, you were assigned these people to buy for. So that's the beginning of that message. Message promise. So I grab all four of these, execute all four of these promises here, and I get back these four record sets. If the buyer one is blank, then there are no buyers on this list, so I guess we're done. Okay, so if there's no loved ones, then I guess we're just going to bypass, because we're going to have to still send out a message to the buyers telling them you don't have anyone to buy for. Same thing for if there's no matches. If there's no matches, then I guess we're going to tell them there's no one to buy for. I don't know why these cases will ever happen, but we want to handle them if they do happen. And we're going to do a loop through each buyer that we got. We're going to grab message names by buyer, loved ones. We're going to grab just that one buyer ID, and we're going to loop through all the loved ones and matches to get a list of names. And that's what's done down here. Message names. Go through the match list one at a time. And if the buyer in the set of matches matches the buyer in question, the one we're trying to make a text for, a message for, then you want to push that onto the matches loved IDs, which is just a new array to keep track of the ones that match. Okay. And then we're going to go through the loved list and find the ones, if that one is included in the list we just reduced down. If it is, then we're going to add it to this list of names with a comma. When we're all done, we're going to go back 2 characters to remove that last space and comma, so the last one doesn't end with a comma and space. And if there are no names, we just replace that with, we were not able to match you with anyone. We have a nice, pleasant message rather than blanks. So then I'm going to add them, as I go through composing the message. Message 1, the list of names. I'm sorry, yeah. Oh, okay, this is saying, okay, if it's SMS, then I want to just do message and names. If it's an email, I want to say, person's name, meaning the buyer's name. Over here, Abe. Abe Smith, message 1, and names. And because it's an email, I'm going to separate each thing with a character turn line feed. Well, I guess it's just a line feed. So we go to the next line. All right, we're adding those to the queue. and we're making sure that it's been made safe. You don't have any SQL injections happening. And I think that's it. I think we already covered everything. Wait, one message is sent. Oh yeah, this is what I was saying before. We're going to set the list characteristic called messages sent. This way, when you go to refresh this page, it knows that you're in this status rather than still needing to be clicking to finalize. You don't want to send the message more than once. All right. I'm not really sure what else we need to cover. Does that cover everything? Oh, actually it doesn't. So let me just say, so that covers part of phase 4 and phase 5. I didn't cover the list page or the calculation part. The list page is built very much the same as the match page. It's just the same sort of code. It's very similar. If you can figure out the match page, you can figure out the list page. In fact, just copy and paste. That's how I built the match page. I copy and pasted the list page and just changed a few things. So you can do the same thing back if you're copying my code. You can copy that code and make a list page out of it. Not a problem. I'm not showing how I did the calculation. That took me a good 8 hours, I think, to get that calculation correct. It's not simple. And so I've been thinking about how I keep going through showing all this code and have to realize that I can't really afford to show you all the code, because then you could just steal my website. You know, the whole app would be yours. That's not really where I really want to go. I want to teach. I want to show you what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it. But I don't really want to give away all my code. I'm not going to make this repository public. So I'm not really trying to give away the company. I'm just trying to illustrate, you know, how you would go about doing something like that. All right, so is that it? I guess I want to wax eloquent for a few minutes here about when I think about how Node.js is put together. I'm really pretty fascinated. The more you think about how this is done, each of these dbcall files, they're just, you know, piles of functions. See, you say module export, you're just function. You just, when this file is pulled in, it's just defining functions. You're not actually running any of them. They're just defined, right? And then you go look at your routes. Well, they're saying when you get a post to this route, do the following. You're not actually running any code at this point. You're just saying when you get in this situation, this is the code you will run. When you get into this situation, this is the code you will run, et cetera, down through all this list. Same thing with these services. When they're called, then they get executed, but otherwise they're just kind of being defined. They're not actually running at this point until these things happen. So if you go down to the app, right at the top, you're basically pulling in all these files. You're okay. So this you are running. Run the setup. And then you're, defining, okay, when you start getting calls into the app, you want to handle it this way. You want to log it this way. It's setting things up. It's not actually running. It's just defining what will happen. Defining your routes. When you get a route, when you get a URL call to this, call this, and you're basically attaching this, these code blocks onto these URL routes. So you're like conglomerating these pieces all together like a big bouquet of flowers or something. And you add this little flower at the end, and then when it does get the startup event, after you've called all the other startups, you just go through and say, okay, start listening. At that point, you're done running the program, if you think about it, because it takes you like maybe a little more than a second to run through everything and conglomerate all the flowers into the bouquet, and then you say, here we go, we're running. And at that point, everything has been put into memory in this controller of sorts. And when something comes into the route, it just calls from memory all the things that's been grabbed. It's been grabbed, it's been called, it's been collected, all these functions that have been built and attached. So it's like one big, like I said, bouquet of flowers sitting in memory that, as far as I understand it, it doesn't go back out to disk and reread the pages. It doesn't need to. It's already built everything. Everything is a callback, and all the functions that you're calling back have already been defined. Everything is completely defined. And you're just done running the program in just a couple seconds. It just seems strange to me that it's like that. Kind of cool. All right. What else do I have to talk about? I guess one of the things I realized when I was partway through the design here, on the previous page, let me just pull this up here. Let's say if I'm making a new. Over here, where I define the gift, what if the person doesn't know their gift yet? Well, we built a way of updating that by text. Someone can text into the system. It's not built yet, but the design allows for this, that someone would text the system and say, here's my gift ID, please add that in. But what if the person is a child that doesn't have a phone? How do we update the gift for that person? I don't know. I'm trying to think of a secure way to do that, and nothing's coming to mind yet, because I think, like, okay, how would I do that in a way that people couldn't hack or figure out, abuse or whatever? So I have to think about that some more, but that seems like that's something I would want to figure out. Okay, stay tuned until next time. Should we interesting things come up.